Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 13.5 has been out for a few days. I've been using it on my iPhone 11 Pro Max as well as the 2020 iPad Pro, and I also have it installed on this jet black iPhone 7. And so this is the jet black version. If you're not familiar with it, it looks a lot like an iPhone 8, but it's actually an iPhone 7. And so I have it installed on all of these devices, and I'm going to talk about how it's been for me, how it's been for you based off the YouTube community poll, which there were a lot of responses this time. So I have some good data about battery usage. I'll talk about that in a moment. And also I'll talk about how it's been performance-wise and any of the weird bugs that it might have. Now, the first thing is, up until about 10 minutes before recording this video, I had zero issues, not a single lockup, not a single freeze or anything. But then I went into the Telegram app. I always use that for communicating with you and checking for some wallpapers with some friends and things like that. And it locked up completely. And so it wasn't the iPhone that locked up, it was the app that locked up. So I don't know if it was an issue with Telegram or rather an issue with the iPhone, but everything else worked fine around it. I closed the app and reopened it and it was fine. So that was the only issue I've seen since installing this. And that includes the GM version, which it's the same exact version. So I've been using this for well over 5 days now, since Monday basically, and I've had no issues whatsoever. So that's a great sign. Mail is also working well for me. So as I get notifications, they actually show up in mail like they should, and I've had no issues with mail. A few of you have said you've still seen some issues, so you've switched to things like Outlook, which have actually improved your battery life, I guess. And I've seen that when switching from different mail apps too, or two different mail apps. So I may try that, but right now it seems to be working okay. Now, performance has been good. Performance has been super smooth. Like I said, going into all of my normal apps is fine. Opening the camera is nice and quick. Everything transitions quickly. I've had no issues. The same is true on the iPad, and also the iPhone 7 should have similar performance. I'm seeing the same thing in the comments. So even if you're using a 7 or a 6S, 6S Plus, going into different apps seems to be equally smooth and fast. So you'll see there's a little stutter as it loads there, and this was just booted up, so it's doing a bunch of background operations. But in general, it's been smooth when I've had it turned on. You'll see scrolling is nice and smooth. Going into the camera is nice and fast, and everything seems to be working well. And a lot of you say the same thing. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But the first thing is the VPN issue. A lot of people are saying, is the VPN issue fixed? And what I mean by the VPN issue is if you're using a VPN, maybe you're using Proton VPN or NordVPN or Surfshark or any of those, and you go into that, the data was not necessarily being encrypted when you were sending it back and forth like it should be. Now, Proton VPN and none of the others have confirmed this, and nor has Apple. So I don't know if it's fixed. They haven't really commented on it, so maybe it's not fixed. And so I'm not really sure what that's about, but right now it seems like it still potentially could be an issue until we hear more about it. Now, as far as battery life, it's actually been pretty good. So if I go down to battery here, and then I go to battery health, you'll see my battery health is at 98%, and that's pretty good after 6 months or 7 months at this point, and it's normal for this to degrade over time. I've seen in the comments from the YouTube community poll of people saying this update brought my battery health down, and the update doesn't bring battery health down. It simply rechecks the actual physical battery capacity. All lithium-ion batteries, or really all batteries, degrade over time, and until someone invents a better battery, that's just what happens. So it's going to continue to go down just with normal usage. So if it goes down when you update, it's just simply rechecking every time and showing you what the actual capacity is. Now, as far as battery life, there's something that's changed here. Now, Thomas, a follower of mine, messaged me and pointed this out, and that was something I didn't notice initially, but a lot of background or screen off time is being measured here. So you have dark blue and light blue, as you can see here, and I have 3 hours and 23 minutes of screen off time and 3 hours and 1 minute of screen off time in the past 24 hours. And what this means is screen on time is when your phone is doing something, the display is turned on. Screen off time is when you're usually doing something like playing music, but your display is off. Or maybe you've got a video running in the background, but the display is off. So it's actually doing work, but the display is turned off. And so with all of this background activity or the light blue going on, it's kind of interesting that it's doing something when I'm not really doing a lot. So some people are seeing this, although their battery life is still good. So you'll see here's my battery life over the past few days, and I've had anywhere from 4 hours and 26 minutes of screen on time to 3 hours and 48 minutes, about 4 hours, and I'm still using about 50% of my battery life and having 2 hours and 21 minutes of screen off time. That means that I'm only using 50% of the battery before I charge it again. And generally, that means I'm going to get about 8 to 12 hours of screen on time, depending on how I'm using it. I do use it for music with the screen off, and that does use the battery. So if you combine all of this and you're just doing things like browsing the web or using it for music, you're going to get the 10 to 12 hours that you would expect with this device. And many of you are reporting that the battery is much improved or the same as iOS 13.4.1. In fact, I took out of 300 comments, everyone that commented about battery, and wanted to see how battery was for you, and then put it together to see who said it was good or bad. So here's the stats on the left. Now, 67 of you have said that battery life is the same or better than iOS 13.4.1. 22 of you have said that it's not as good. And those 22, a lot of them said they just installed the update. So you need to give it a little bit of time and you'll probably see an improvement. Many people are seeing improvements, especially on the iPhone 7, for example. That's why I have it here. And many of you are seeing improvements on all of your devices. Now, many of you are reporting that not only is battery good, but performance is greatly improved on all of these devices as well. So many of you should see an improvement there. Now, there are a few app errors and problems that people have been seeing with this update, and the main one is this error, where people are seeing this when trying to open an app, where it says the app is no longer shared with you. To use it, you must buy it from the App Store. Now, you're only going to see this, and this was off of Twitter, you're only going to see this on some devices. I haven't seen it on any of mine, and in fact, iOS 13.5 may not be the issue. It could be on the server side. So Apple hasn't commented on this, but if it is on the iOS side, you'll see an iOS 13.5.1 update pretty quickly, I would imagine. But if it's on the server side, they may have already fixed it, but Apple hasn't commented about it. Now, other issues people are seeing, there are a few people that are seeing issues when going into their privacy settings, for example. So maybe going in here, checking out the new settings for exposure logging, things like that. People may be seeing an issue, but some people are saying that they're seeing some freezes in settings when going into privacy, but most people don't have that issue. Other people are saying when they're using 3D touch or haptic touch, it seems to lag. And so it seems okay for me on this device. Let's check the iPhone 7. It looks okay, but yeah, it looks okay on that too. So it just depends. It may be a bug that may come or go. It's hard to say, but it seems to be okay for me. I've been using it fine for a few days as well. Now, there are a couple people saying that they're having issues with Bluetooth. Now, the problem with Bluetooth is it can have interference. So for example, I've got two other devices here and a Mac in front of me. And with all of those devices with Bluetooth turned on, there could be some interference. So if you're in an area with a lot of Bluetooth devices, see if moving to a different area helps. But a few people were saying they were having issues with their AirPods connecting to Bluetooth and dropping. But most people were not saying that. And then finally, some people are saying notifications are taking a long time to show up or aren't showing up at all. Now, we've seen this bug before. I've seen this a little bit where they seem to show up sporadically sometimes. So I'm not sure if that's maybe a server issue that goes along with what Apple was doing with the App Store. There could be something going on. But again, we've heard nothing official, but we'll see if it improves over the next few days or so. Now let's take a look at the YouTube community poll. But before we do that, here are all the problems or issues that people have mentioned. So you'll see 109 times battery was mentioned, and that could be good or bad. Again, I tallied that earlier. Heat was not really an issue for most people. Most people were saying that the phone had been improved as far as that goes. RAM management, again, most people are saying it's fine. And then you've got some people mentioning Wi-Fi, but I'd be curious to know if it's bad Wi-Fi with a specific type of router or not. Sometimes that happens. Here's all the devices you were using. So these are all the devices. And as you can see here, the most used device, at least in the comments, is an iPhone 11, which I thought was pretty interesting. Now let's take a look at the comments and the poll itself. Now at the time of recording this video, you can see there's 9.3K votes, or 9,300 votes or so. So I really appreciate everyone that's voted, and you can see there's 349 comments, and I've read every single one and took all of that information to give you the data that I've talked about already. Now, 55% of you say this is great. That's a huge improvement over the previous versions, and you can see only 2% say it's terrible, 9% are having some bugs but say it's okay, and 17% of you have stayed on older versions such as iOS 13.4.1, or maybe you're still on 12.4.7, I believe was the last version, and 17% of you are using Android. So thanks again for for voting, even if you're not using an iPhone. Now let's take a look at some of the comments. Of course, I can't read them all since there's so many, but let's take a look at some of them. How many years will the iPhone 11 Pro Max have good battery until it starts draining fast? I would say it's going to be the same until the battery starts to go bad physically. So usually 2 or 3 years, the battery needs to be replaced, and they're not terribly expensive if you haven't upgraded to a different phone by then. iPhone 2nd Gen, I noticed no issues on 13.5. It's fast and smooth. Running great on my iPhone 8. Battery life is much better now than iOS 13.4. Also, iPad 11-inch 2018 on 13.5. Great battery life is solid. Smooth and fast. Great job, and thanks for the compliment. Seems like it fixed the email issue I had on my iPad and my iPhone XR. It's been very good and smooth. All great on the XS. Battery life seems slightly better than usual. iPhone 11 user here. Battery life has been good, but still experiencing the Bluetooth bug. Disconnects frequently, especially on my AirPods. Thinking maybe my AirPods are broken, but it also randomly disconnects on other Bluetooth devices. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I would say you probably have a bunch of devices that are Bluetooth and they're interfering with one another. It never reads my face with a mask on. Wasn't that the whole point? No, actually the point was to bring up the passcode lock faster so that you didn't have to swipe up multiple times, so it won't read your face if you have a mask on. 11 Pro lasted for 11 hours. First time seeing such battery usage. So far, everything run well as mentioned on my devices, running 13.5. Can't wait for iOS 14. No difference between 13.4.1 and this one. Using on an iPhone 8 and 6S Plus, battery is okay. Performance is as great as it can be. It's very smooth on my 11. Can't complain of anything. Battery life is also seeing some gain compared to the very good battery life or battery iOS 13.4.1 was giving. It's really, really good on my iPhone 7 so far. This overheating issue has been fixed for me, and I'm also no longer experiencing battery drain. However, there is one bug I'm having, and that's where I can't delete a notification from my notification center when my phone is locked. I can delete every other notification except for one. I have to unlock my phone first before I can delete it. iPhone 11 Pro, the heating issue seems to be improved. Only certain heavy apps will make the phone heat up, whereas before most apps will. Using XR, everything is feeling great again. Had some unusual stuttering when going back to home screen, which is fixed now. Mail still has bugs, still suffer from network issues, no VPN indicator, so there's no way that telling that your VPN is connected or not. iPhone 11 Pro. Great on iPhone 8 Plus, 64 gigabyte space gray. iPhone 7 Plus, abnormal heating even though the use is just casual. Battery life, or 93% health, has a major hit, and in no time it drains a lot faster than, let's say, on 13.4.1. Performance is great. RAM management is just okay. Sometimes while opening the control center, I had to try 3 to 4 times just to bring it on screen. No freezing whatsoever, but need to improve a lot. I would say give it a hard reboot and see if that fixes the issue, meaning force reboot the phone. No issues here using iPhone 8 Plus and XS Max. Battery improved, but not that much. iPhone 7, 7th generation iPod Touch, and 3rd generation iPad Air. Battery life on iPhone 7 is slightly worse today on iPhone 7 compared to 13.4.1. I think it will improve over the next few days. iOS 13.5 has been pretty good on my iPhone 8. All of the slowdowns and random bugs like graphic glitches and apps crashing that I was experiencing on 13.4.1 seem to be fixed. Battery life seems to be a little worse, but it always needs a day or so to finish up background tasks, so I'm not worried. And thanks for the compliment. iPhone 11 Pro Max, LTE and Wi-Fi sudden dropouts. Battery life and performance, like new, always fire. Working great on my iPhone 8. I have no complaints on it. So far, so good. iPhone 11 Pro Max. And so that's it for iOS 13.5. I would expect this to be basically the last major update, but maybe we'll see an iOS 13.6 before the fall or autumn. Apple will show iOS 14 in June at WWDC if they do everything like they have every year, so we'll see some new features with that, but there'll be betas up until the fall. So iOS 14 won't come out to the public probably until September or October. Since we expect iPhone 12 to launch in October at this point, it'll probably be sometime around then. But with that, you'll see new features, hopefully some stability issues and a bunch of other bug fixes, and that will be hopefully a lot more stable than iOS 13 was. Every other year seems to be better. So iOS 12 was much more stable than iOS 13 for most. So again, I would expect that out of iOS 14. Now, if you found anything else new, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. below. And of course, if you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, I'll link it in the description as I always do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.